So before we do kick off, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm dialing in from, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We recognize that every day we live and work on Aboriginal land, and we pay our respects to elders past and present, and like to extend that respect to any First Nations people here today. Guys, welcome. Welcome to it's our new female founder webinar series, which I'm so excited for. We're going to take an unfiltered dive into the stories behind building Australia's most exciting new startups. And we couldn't think of a better place to start than with sisters Annabel and Lucy Hay, who are co-founders of Clutch Glue. They're going to tell us a lot more about Clutch and their journey, but I'll say Clutch is a globally patented sweat-resistant but water-soluble clothes adhesive. And actually, I have some. Yeah, and this is not planted because I literally carry it around everywhere in my bag with me. So if that's not a good recommendation, then I don't know what is. I thought to kick off this conversation, I mean, it'd be great just to start with the origin story, and I'd like to go right back to the initial spark. And maybe Annabelle, kick off with you. Like, when did she know that building something was something that you wanted to do in your life?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think for any founder and pretty much anyone that's on the call today, you kind of just have this, I don't know, this fire in your belly, right? Where you're just kind of like, I know that I want to do something cool. I know that I've kind of got this energy to give something a crack. And I think I was always like that during school. I think I was always pretty keen to just like give things a go and I was never afraid of failing. And I think that yeah, it was just always something that I was just really curious as a child when it came to, yeah, just inventing things. Like I used to think about inventing things all the time to try and like get me out of school. Like I remember at one point I like fully had this idea during, I was like in the trenches doing the HSC and I was like, Mum, like I reckon if I invented some kind of like 3D shoe printing business and mum was like, Annabelle, like please can you just like continue doing your studies
Study.
and then you can go and do whatever you want. But I remember as a kid, like our dad, Lucy, now, if you can't tell, we are sisters. We don't look alike, but we very much are. And I remember our dad, we were over at a family friend's house, and maybe I was like 6 or 7, and they were all talking about all the men in the room, and they were all pilots, by the way, all Qantas pilots. And they were talking about how they would be billionaires if they had actually invented the things that they had thought about inventing. And for some reason, that just absolutely stuck in my head. And I remember in that moment, as like a 6 or 7 year old, I like vowed to myself that I was like, I will never let that happen to me. I refuse to live with the regret of what could have been. So, really, when I finally had the one good idea, which was a fateful night at Chinese Laundry watching a really small artist at the time perform called Dom Dollar, had this terrible mishap with fashion tape, and it was so embarrassing. It burnt my skin off. I sweated all off within the second I got to the club. It was really hard to place on my skin, and I just hated all the single-use waste that was involved with using it. And in a moment of sheer embarrassment and frustration from having that wardrobe malfunction, I was like, it would be so much easier if I could just glue myself into my clothes. And then I kind of went home and I woke up the next morning and I was like, that's actually a really good idea. And then I was like, surely somebody else has thought about doing this because it's such a no-brainer. Like, surely gluing myself into my clothes, like, I've never had an original experience in my life. TikTok's told me that like, if I've had a thought, somebody else has definitely made a TikTok about it before me. And so I was like, that's interesting. So I went online, started doing a bunch of research, and there was just nothing on the market that did what I wanted it to do, which was a sweat resistant water soluble clothes adhesive that's seriously strong, won't seep through your clothes. It's hypoallergenic, vegan, palm oil free, and the packaging is made of 100% recycled plastics that is then 100% recyclable. A very tall order, but in my mind, I was like, that is a huge gap in the market. And I knew that it made sense to me. That was something that I was
Mm.
passionate about. I loved clothes and I loved a really tangible solution to a problem that we've all dealt with as women at one point in our life. So it was kind of a no-brainer to kind of just keep stay curious and sort of I just kind of started ticking away at how I could possibly actually execute this. And then, yeah, it took me 4 years to invent and patent the glue, and here we are.
Okay, well, there's so much to unpack there, but I actually, one of the things I want to understand first, I mean, it's even interesting to go back to that conversation of you hearing your dad and his friends talk about lots of people have ideas, but very few people go on to actually then build them. What
Mm.
was the friction for you, if any, between having the idea for Clutch and actually starting on it and starting that work?
I think that the one thing that was always that was always going to be the hardest part, and it's something that people always ask me questions about. They're like, "How did you know where to start that?"
Mm.
And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. I went to university and did a degree in construction management and property. But out of that degree and out of working full time in construction, I knew that I didn't need the answers. I just needed money and to delegate. So that's exactly what I did. And finding the right help is something that is a bit of a minefield, but it was something that I took a lot of time doing to make sure that I had people around me that I trusted to build this business for me, basically. And the first step was to obviously find the formula. I needed to figure out whether this was something that actually could be done. So, off the back of that, I remember speaking to a lawyer, and her advice was just it's going to be the hardest part, finding somebody who's going to invent this for you, and it needs to be globally patentable, but also it's your IP and your formula. We all know that a lot of inventors like to own their own IP, which is totally fair enough. So I knew it was going to be a really hard find to find somebody who would do this for me. However, I knew that UNSW and universities had people that would do research projects. They had incubators and startup incubators and things like that, but that really wasn't for me because I didn't really need the business side of it at that point. I just needed somebody who had access to a lab to try and make something for me. So off the back of that, I emailed UNSW Chemical Science or something, and I was like, "Hey, I used to go to your university. Do you have anybody who would do a research project for me?" And they actually ghosted me maybe the first like 5 times, and then it wasn't until like the sixth time because like hearing one no is not enough, right? Hearing two no's isn't enough, and hearing three no's isn't enough. And I was like, I'm just going to keep asking until somebody says yes. And Lucy knows that I've literally been like that since I was a child. If somebody told me no, I just actually just like I fully just wouldn't shut up until somebody just like caved. And so essentially, that's what I did. I kept emailing, and then they were like, okay, maybe reach out to this person and see what he says. So I got his email address. I sent him an NDA. He signed it. We jumped on a call. I talked to him about my little project. And he was like, yeah, I can do this for you, but why do you need a sweat resistant but water soluble glue? That goes against all glue formulations that are out there right now. And I was like, look, the details don't matter, Raymond. Can you do this or not? And he said, I think I can. He had
Like, don't ask
I
questions.
think that's one of the funniest parts of that story is how Raymond was like, I took on this project because I thought that the idea was a bit silly. And he was like, well,
yeah,
glue is not meant to be water soluble, so why the hell would you do that? I think that's pretty
totally.
funny.
And then so yeah, we kind of just I was just like, look, details don't matter. And I also knew that if he didn't really fundamentally understand it, he wasn't going to run off with the IP. So yeah, it was a pretty easy agreement at the end of the day. And I paid him $35,000 to invent this glue for me. Took him a year. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning and the end to his relationship. To this day, I still email him and I give him clutch updates, right? And he doesn't care. He doesn't want to hear from me. He like doesn't care.
Oh,
Like he's just kind of like, that's nice, that's cool. And I'm like, you don't know what you've done for the girlies, Raymond. And he just doesn't care. He is an
Raymond.
academic first and foremost, and that's it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is such a great story. I just want to say quickly before I ask the next question, I'm trying to figure out who it is. Someone's not on mute and there's a bit of background noise. I have just gone through and muted a few of you who I thought might be the suspects. So apologies if that, but please stay on mute. Unless you're Annabelle or Lucy. Um, my next question is really about like Lucy, how you got involved in this story. Like, obviously you're sisters, so you kind of knew what Annabelle was working on. Like, did you just sort of start getting dragged into it, or how did that unfold?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like fell into it. I don't know. I wake up one morning and I was like, oh God, I'm still here. And now we're working full time on this business. That's crazy. My background's in advertising. So I like literally the person who was just like absolutely obsessed with the Gruen transfer. I think it started when I was in school and I was like, this is insane. And my dad our dad always used to be like, Lucy loves like to watch the ads more than she likes to watch the actual show. And to be honest, I don't know what that says about me as a person, but anyway, love ads. So naturally I fell into advertising and was a copywriter at a couple of the big agencies for a while. So I'd always had this like fascination with brand, and the power that brands have to like actually incite change in the world and like change people's like opinions on things and whatever. And I was like, this is really cool. But every brand that I work on says that they have all of these like passions and intentions to do things, but like don't actually do anything. So when Annabelle was starting Clutch and I was being her little glue mule while she was living in Hong Kong, and I was like shuttling around glue around the city during COVID. So it was probably definitely not allowed to be shuttling glue around the city, but alas, we do what we need to do. I kind of just said like, what is your plans? What are your branding plans? What do you want this product to look like, say, do? And Annabelle was like, I don't know, you do it. So that was it. I took that and ran with it. And so for me, when I started researching all of like the competitors or just like how fashion tape showed up in the world, I realized that it all kind of came from this like really shame-based place. Like, ooh, like don't have a wardrobe malfunction, Britney Spears, and like that's so embarrassing. Like don't flash coming out of a cab kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous because fashion is about self-expression and we should be empowering people to like wear what they want, not like shaming them for showing their like naturally made body, you know? And so I was like, that's it. That's what Clutch is going to be. We're going to really stand apart from our competitors, not just by being a cool innovation, but also being a brand that like stands for something that's cool and progressive too. And we've continued to live up to that story today, and we're just continuing finding ways to like show up for people. And it makes it easy for people to connect with us, I think. Like I could go on and on about the power of brand, so I will stop myself. But I do like it's just been so powerful for us to really add that extra layer to what is already a really cool and effective product.
And so you guys started working together. I mean, you came on to do the brand. What was talk us about what it was like in those days. What else were you doing with your time? I mean, you're both working, and what did your lives actually look like?
Yeah, so I think during COVID, I decided to move to Hong Kong because I needed to make more money to be able to afford to pay for this business and bootstrap this business. It cost me 160 grand over 4 years out of my own pocket to get off the ground. And with that, I just was paying too much tax in Australia. So if anybody knows the tax man here, no, you don't. This is completely under the cone of silence. And I just went, you know what? I need more out of a paycheck. I do. So I turned to Hong Kong. The company that I was working for at the time, JLL, is a global property firm. So I was able to transfer internally over to Hong Kong. There was a really great job opportunity over there, which was basically like a 4 times promotion because everybody was leaving Hong Kong. Nobody was going in. And I was like, get me there. I am going. So basically jumped on a flight, got my visa approved within 5 weeks, jumped on a flight the next day and spent 3 weeks in isolation in a hotel room. And then I was released into the Hong Kong wild. And honestly, the 2 years that I was there, I was just absolutely spending every single cent on this business. And so, yeah, I was kind of just juggling a full-time head of operations job for Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and South Korea for this global construction company, and doing Clutch full-time. Also, in our spare time, Lucy and I were literally communicating via text and video calls and things like that. And just, yeah, we did it pretty much remotely the whole time. And as Lucy suggested, like when it came to people testing out all of the samples that Raymond was doing for us, Lucy was literally shuttling those to all of my friends and a panel of people that we had that were testing out the formulas to make sure that they were suitable for all skin types. And they were, you know, we ended up ultimately landing on the one that everybody loved. But I can assure you there were about 12 that people very much did not love before we landed on the Clutch one. So that's pretty much what my day-to-day looked like. I think that there was one day in Hong Kong where I spent 6 weeks in isolation. I wasn't allowed to leave my house. And that was pretty tough. But again, it was like the best focus time I could have ever imagined. I kind of just like spilled everything that I had into Clutch. And if I ever needed a break, I played bananagrams against myself.
So
Oh
fun.
my gosh. Yeah, go on.
For me, so I was, as I've said, working in advertising at the time. I was working in an agency called DDB. And ad agencies love people having side hustles because they're like, amazing, this is another award grab that we can have. So they were super supportive, which was cool, but that didn't change the fact that my like workload in advertising was massive plus Clutch. But it was just a case of just like pouring everything and every bit of time I had into Clutch when it was free. Thankfully, also working in advertising, I had quite a few connections, that being whether it was my art director, another designer, producers, photographers, sort of who I sort of had in my Rolodex that I could kind of just call and be like, hello, we need to shoot the product in my garage tomorrow. Can you please help? And thankfully, a lot of people that I had access to through that. But my work was incredibly supportive of it. Not that that necessarily made it less of a workload. They, if anything, they loaded me up more just to make sure that I was still actually doing my job. But yeah, that's sort of how we balanced it. There was just a hell of a lot of out of hours poured into this.
And I do want to break it down a little bit more in terms of what your lives looks like, because I know, coming from my perspective and seeing you guys now, what you've built is so incredibly impressive and successful, and you guys come off as like you've never had a doubt in the world. Like, were there times where you were like, this is too much, I'm investing too much, I'm sacrificing too much? Like, were there times where you lost that belief?
No, I think that like like not in my mind, because like when and problems come up all the time. Like I'm not going to sit here and say that like Lucy and I are like drowning in problems right now. So like,
Constantly.
you know, and that's just the reality of what it's like. And for me though, I just knew that there was like never an issue that we could encounter that we weren't able to overcome. And that's just the case with anything. That's life, that's in construction, like whether it's having a creative solution to something, taking a tack that, you know, changing a tack because, you know, your first strategy didn't work out, or whether it's, yeah, throwing the money at the problem. Regardless of what it is, like I knew that we were able to overcome it. And it was just exciting in my mind that, and perhaps I'm just like an eternal optimist, but like, it was exciting to me that we were encountering problems because it meant that we weren't stagnated. It meant that we were moving forward. And so I was always met with these problems with like definitely stress, but like mainly excitement that like, you know, things were changing and things were evolving, and, you know, we needed to overcome these challenges before we were, you know, then able to ultimately grow. And what's
Yeah.
funny is that like when you encounter a challenge for the first time, I know it seems like the world is ending, but like now we have like the same problems, like sometimes multiple times a day, that like I don't even blink at now. Like you just do it and you're just like, yeah, cool, whatever. So like that's growth in itself, and it's so tangible, and like exciting to reflect on and look back on. So I don't know. Yeah, there was, I genuinely have never had a time where I've been like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
But I think also to that, and kind of to link back to what Annabelle was saying at the start as well, just not taking no for an answer. Like we've had our manufacturers turn around and say, no, we're definitely like not going to hit that deadline, or that won't be fixed, or we're not going to reach that. And we were like, well, no, that's ridiculous. We will find a way to do it. And we always do. So it's just about like not taking that no for an answer.
Mm. I mean, it's super inspiring to hear you guys talk about it. And like, I do want to hear more about some of the like pivotal moments that have helped build that belief for you, and have sort of tipped things along the way. Like, talk us through some of those key milestones in your mind that really reaffirmed like this could be huge, or this will be huge.
I think the day that we went viral for the first time is actually still in my mind, probably the most excited I'd ever felt. And what happened was we were like 3 months in, and we were just uploading like silly little TikToks. And there was one fateful day I was over at Lucy's house, and she was just like, we just need to film a bunch of use cases of like how you use Clutch, how you apply it, what fabrics it works on, and all of that kind of thing. And let's just have like a huge bank of content. So I went over to Lucy's house with pretty much my entire wardrobe, and we filmed like hundreds of videos basically with different use cases. And earlier that day, I'd received a comment on one video that had like 300 views on it, right? Of somebody being like, could I use this on a spaghetti strap? And so I just replied to the comment, uploaded a 10-second video of me doing a voiceover and gluing a spaghetti strap to my shoulder, because that was one that we'd filmed that day. And that was kind of it. Uploaded it, went home, went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and basically sold out overnight. We'd made over 160 grand overnight. And yeah, that video had over 9 million views, over 420,000 likes. And it was fucking crazy. And that's when I just kind of went, holy shit, this is like resonated with everybody. And then also the good part about that was that we had so much content. So off the back of all of those comments that we had, we were just replying to all of them with like different use cases and how it works and answering everybody's FAQs. And like that was just perfect timing. How it all went. And yeah, so I think that that's definitely just the best day of the business so far. There are plenty of wins that also feel almost as amazing as that, but there's nothing quite like connecting to your audience in a way that is just authentic, and it's just a direct communication between you and the customer. And yeah, that's just my favorite. I don't know, Luce, whether there's another thing you want to speak to.
No, that one by far, because it just like immediately we had market fit and the proof was there. That was all we kind of needed. For me, a more like this one's kind of more been in hindsight, kind of reflecting on our journey as we roll out into retailers. I just think when we got into Priceline was a huge milestone for us, and maybe we didn't quite maybe celebrate it in the moment or sort of think about it that much. But they really adopted us super early on, and they have been like made money tenfold for doing that, because they've been able to go on the massive journey with us. And it's almost synonymous, like Clutch being in Priceline is like a whole thing. So they were very smart for doing that. But I think that's like also, again, just like, so we had our customers who were validating that we were an amazing product, but then also to have a retailer, and a very reputable one of that, be like, yes, we need you in the door. We're going to range you even outside of like actual range dates. We're getting you on the shelf ASAP. While we were like, oh my God, amazing. Yes, a retailer. I look back on in hindsight and I'm like, that was a big risk for them to bring on this brand that had literally just started, and like throw us on their shelves. But that has been incredible for them and incredible for us. So that one's one that I think about often, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty special.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's huge. And so at what point, was there one moment, or was it a series of kind of milestones? When did you decide, okay, we're ready to quit our jobs, like we're ready to do this full time? What did that look like?
Honestly, the past, I'd say probably now like 8-9 months has been absolutely wild. Like there were a lot of, I think the first, I'd say 18 months of the business was purely just like scaling hard, trying to just like get our D2C right, putting a lot into our social media and, the founder story and all of that kind of thing. And it was super scrappy. Honestly, our supply chain was fucked. Like it was so bad. And it was just like navigating all of these issues that you do encounter when finally your business has some traction, and then you need to solve a lot of fundamental problems before then you can actually start scaling hard and reaching all of these new markets. And so then Shark Tank happened. There were a lot of things that actually happened like behind the scenes that no one really knows about. So all of this happened, pretty quickly. So what happened was July last year, I think, StartMate approached us and they were like, we want you to be a part of our StartMate accelerator. Please apply. And we were like, okay, we'll apply. I had like no idea what venture capital was. Like, I'm not from this world, like no idea. And so we applied, we got in, and then I was talking to my lawyer and he was like, you've already got a product and you're already overcoming or / have overcome a lot of the problems that you're going to face in terms of mainly supply issue and market fit and go-to-market strategy and all of those kinds of things, which is what the accelerator's for. So perhaps it's not for you, but have you thought about a raise? And I was like, oh, like maybe. And he was like, I think that that's right for you. Do a pre-seed raise. And I think you'll find that that's really going to put a rocket under you, because all you really need now is just the support, and what you can't do as a team, and how you need to grow the business and what resources you need to keep growing it. So, and basically, that was the main thing, was just like cash flow, having a bit of cash underneath us to be able to invest in a bunch of initiatives that we wanted to be able to do, but couldn't quite do. And also just resources, and expertise where we needed it. And so our lawyer knew Blackbird, and he was just like, look, talk to Blackbird. They might be a bit interested. They don't really do consumer brands, but maybe they might like you. And so we sort of started sniffing around these VC conversations and strategic investors and things like that. And we were not met with a single no, which was crazy. I was kind of told that people were like, not going to like it and people are savages and you're a single SKU brand, like nobody would invest in you. And I literally didn't hear a single no, which was crazy. So off the back of that, we ended up, then what happened, sorry, was I went on Shark Tank. And then I off camera, what happened was, so I went on Shark Tank with an undervalued business. I said that I don't know, I went on saying like 200 grand for 10% or something like that. Our real evaluation was 2 million for 20% of the business, which is what the round was. And we were actually doing the round at the same time that I was filmed Shark Tank, which was in August last year, was when I filmed it. And so off the show, 2 weeks later, you then hear from the Sharks lawyers. And they're like, all right, we'll start getting some stuff out to you. And I just replied being like, hey, actually, I'm doing a current round and our real evaluation is 2 million now for 20% of the business. Do you still want to do that? And they came back actually saying, yes, but you have to give me founders shares. And I went, absolutely fucking not. Thank you very much. And so I just went, that's not right for me. And then they blackmailed me and they were just like, well, if you don't take our offer, your chances of your episode getting aired are second to none. And I went, I literally heard you tell me in the face that I was the best pitch you've ever seen. I'm fairly certain the producers are going to want to air that one. And so I just called their bluff. And then obviously we all know how that worked out.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that kind of all happened, declined the Shark Tank offer, and then we ended up closing our round with Blackbird leading that round and then a few other strategic investors on board as well. And then it ended up eventuating into being the world's largest pre-seed cap raise for an FMCG company ever, which was crazy. And then what happened was Lucy and I were like, right, we need to quit our day jobs. So that's kind of like it all sort of just happened. It was this big whirlwind where we were like, oh my God, we need to like, we now can afford to take ourselves all in because finally, like paying yourself a salary, like, 4, 5, 6 grand a month, taking out of the business. I'm like, that's stock, that's marketing, that's all of these things. I was just running the numbers being like, God, it's so much more efficient spending this money on the business than it is in my own pocket until I sort of had this like larger safety net where I knew that I could afford to take us on board and not compromise the business and the growth of the business. That's when it felt right. And so that's kind of how it all happened. And it was this perfect storm and it was chaotic and it's not as glamorous as being like, I woke up on a Monday and I got out of bed and I was like, I'm quitting today. No, it was not like that. It was like this, like, it felt like my head was just like in a dishwasher for maybe like 4 months before we decided that that's what we were going to do.
It's truly an incredible raising story.
Yeah.
It's bloody inspiring. We're going to jump over to Slido in just a minute. So everyone jump in and upvote because the last 15 minutes, we'll get through as many of those questions as we can. I did want to ask one more question before we do. And that's about sort of founder-led marketing and something that you guys have done so well is really building your own brand and building in public and doing that founder-led marketing. Like how important have you found that and how do you think about that?
The best thing ever. I will say before I take that over to Luce, like we did it to begin with because we couldn't afford talent.
Because it's free.
I was free. So that's kind of how that happened, but I'll let Lucy talk to that.
Yeah, no, I think one thing that I've noticed just particularly online, there are so many small businesses starting up and all of these sort of things popping around. And a lot of them feel very like disconnect. They're kind of just a product there and there's someone standing there pitching the product. And having an actual person who has values and is just like a regular human being attached to a product just gives so much more like character and like makes a product feel so much more rounded. People want to hear the behind the scenes. They want to understand like not just like what this product is and what it does, but like how did you get to making it? Where is it made? What does it look like when it's getting made? Like they want the insight into everything that's sort of going on. And I think with that, like just that peek behind the curtain is always going to be something that people are curious about. And is one of the beauty of social media is that you can easily just like pick up your phone and be like, hey, I'm in a factory today. And it doesn't have to be anything polished or crazy. Like people just want to see it. But also second to that, the thing that I've noticed most, particularly when I'm doing media buying or seeing results from our like organic comms, is that like passion sells. Like the things that perform the best, the things that like drive sales is passion. And who is going to have more passion about your brand than you? And like second to that, like any piece of sort of like UGC content or things that people have made for us, it's always the proper authentic pieces of content from people who are like, I friggin' love this product, is what gets it over the line, which that sounds really stupid and quite obvious, because like obviously you want to buy something off someone who like genuinely loves a product, but it can be hard to find brands out there who are actually doing that. So for me, it's sort of like really communicating that passion, but then also like giving that peek behind the curtain is kind of just why it's such a no-brainer for us, particularly for Clutch. We sort of did founder-led for our approach.
Speaking of, Annabelle, were you going to do a bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes?
Yeah.
I was. I would love to. I mean, if people want to put their cameras on or not, that's fine. But I do want to get some BTS content quickly of like,
Yeah, let's do it quickly now before we jump into questions.
If everybody wants to smile and wave at the camera.
Pop your camera on and give us a little smile and a wave, please.
Yay! Thanks everybody for
Yay.
joining.
Nice.
Thanks everybody. Love
Okay,
that.
cool.
Thank
Going
you.
straight on the gram.
Straight on the gram, you bet.
Let's jump into Slido. We've got 11 minutes. We're going to ask as many questions as possible. So I'm going to fly through. The first one I think you guys have kind of answered, which is the start mate journey. So you've sort of talked about how you did apply. You didn't end up coming through the accelerator. We did invest, but then you ended up raising off the back of it, off the back of kicking off that whole process. So let's move on from that one. I want to ask about the second one. What did your schedule look like when working 9 to 5 and building this brand? Did you have to sacrifice anything, e.g., friendships, relationships, social life?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I think the rule one with like all of this is that like I just had really good communication with everybody, like my employer. Like literally I told JLL that I was like running Clutch, and like they didn't care. I had 2 inboxes up, and they were just kind of like, just like, let her do it, just let her do it. And like that was really great because I felt supported and I felt like I had nothing to hide. Also the same goes for my friends. Honestly, they were all so excited and supportive of it. And that just goes to show, I think, that my friendships were good and in a good place. Helps that Lucy and I are also in long-term healthy relationships as well. So I think our partners were always really supportive and knew what they were getting themselves into. Definitely, met with a few, arguments here and there of just like, all right, like it's 10 p.m., please put the computer down and let's just, spend a bit of quality time together. And those conversations will, I think, always be had. And that's okay. Again, I think Lucy and our partners are just like really patient with us, and they know that, we're building something, and sometimes we have the flexibility to switch off and sometimes we don't, depending on where we're at and what fires we're putting out that day. But yeah, I think that it's been plenty of compromises, and definitely areas where I always feel bad that perhaps, I fell short in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I was juggling so many pieces, but it's always been met with pure understanding, which I think I am incredibly grateful for, and it's never lost on me how supportive everyone has been around us. Definitely, I've got no complaints on that section.
That is amazing. Okay, well, the second one sort of ties into this, so maybe Lucy, you can answer this one. What systems or boundaries helped you protect your energy whilst juggling 2 jobs?
Oh, boundaries. I'm still working on that one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we were working our 9 to 5s, it was just a case of trying to really keep, like, I would do my 9 to 5 between those hours and try and not let things sort of sneak in. So it was always whether I would get up early in the morning, do some Clutch work, get to work, do that, come home, probably do more Clutch work if I wasn't just spending time at home. And then I think, to be honest, this was probably an indicator that we were slowly starting to inch towards the time that we'd be working full time, because that's when it started bleeding into my full-time job, that I would kind of just be doing both at the same time. But it was just about being incredibly strict with our sort of chunks of the day. Like you kind of have to really like section out your day and be like, all right, cool, we're getting up, we're doing exercise, I'm replying to my Clutch emails, then I go to work, then I come home and I'm doing these are my tasks. But again, kind of like what Annabelle said, it's like a huge communication exercise. I worked in like a creative partnership in my job, so I just needed to really make it super clear to my art director, Dan, love Dan, what I was sort of doing and what I was busy with. And to be honest, he picked up a lot of slack, which was kind of helpful. So thank you. But yeah, it was just about being super communicative, and like between Annabelle and I as well. It was like whether one of us kind of just like didn't have the time or the bandwidth to do something, the other would be like, cool, yep, no, I can jump in and do that. So
Totally.
kind
Also,
of
the weekends. Love the
love a
weekend.
weekend because there's no meetings on the weekend.
Unreal. Unreal.
Okay, next question. I love this question. What assumptions did you have about your customer that totally changed once you went live?
Yeah. I think I think we always knew that the young girls were going to get it, or the girlies like us, you know, the ones that are sort of in that 20s to 30s, you know, going out, interested in fashion, interested in looking good and feeling confident. But I really was surprised how the mothers really came into play here. They love it for their children, for themselves as well, but certainly for their children. You know, they're thinking about like, we have this mother that goes through so much clutch because she refuses to hem her kids' school clothes because they're growing so quickly. So she's like, I just clutch them, and then, you know, my son grows like an inch every week. So like now I'm just like hemming his school uniform with clutch until he stops growing, and just like things like that where I'm like, I love that. I love that. And yeah, that makes a big difference to us. Luce, I don't know whether there's anyone else that you want to speak to there.
I think, I mean, this is an assumption I made, like that maybe it's been a good thing for us because it's meant that we've had to do so much education. But I think I assumed that our audience would be like, oh my God, yes, this product, I can use it for all these things. But I think everyone was still very entrenched in the mindset that fashion tape is for holding boobs in clothes. And like, that's something that we've had to do a lot of re-education about, mainly because some people will be like, oh, this product is like expensive or small for just this one use, when that's not the case. So I mean, that's probably an assumption we also had to overcome as well, but has also been a great thing because it just means that there's so many content pillars that we can sort of churn out, and different levers we can pull in order to pull in a specific audience to Clutch. So
Totally.
an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay, the next question you've partly answered, but I think there's one bit we could dive in on a little bit more, which is how did you know when it was time to leave your full-time job? Did you have figures in mind of what the business was to make in order to leave? Was there anything aside from the fundraise that you were looking at to give you conviction in terms of making that leap?
Yeah, it was purely vibes based, and I think that everybody will know that feeling. For me, it was just like, have I got the business to a point where we're just like feeling less volatile? Like there's less really big problems that are coming up. Are things like, has the dust finally settled, and like there are the fundamentals of my business are now at a point where I know that they're steady, and that's like supply chain management, that's having good lawyers, good accountants, making sure that we're just in this good flow. And that to me was what I really wanted to get right before I knew that, you know, we weren't just going to have to cough up, you know, pluck 30 grand out of thin air for like an EDI platform or something like that. Like we kind of had all of our systems in place, or all of our operations in place, and it just meant that there was just like less like ad hoc spending. So like when things became a little bit more consistent, that's when I was like, all right, I know pretty much like how much we need to spend every single month to keep our lights on, and off the back of that, what are our profits, and then can I afford to then take money into my own pocket, or is it better spent back into the business? So that was kind of the back end of my logic behind taking a salary from it.
Okay, that makes sense. Next question, again, part of it you've answered, part of it I really want us to dive into. What was your rationale for raising investment versus bootstrapping? And the second part is, what's the experience of having investors now? I just want to add a element to this question in terms of, how do you think about giving away equity now? And how do you think about building a team that cares as much about Clutch as you guys do?
Totally. So I think in terms of, you know, why we decided to get investment on board in the first place is probably something people are curious about. For us, it was like we had this market fit, but we just couldn't get enough of it fast enough to pretty much everywhere in the world. And it was like, well, every single batch of stock that we were making, you know, we went from making 5,000 to then 10,000 to then the next order being 20,000, then 30,000, then 40,000. Now we're up to like 120,000 a month. And like that is just absolutely wild how much money you need to front up before then you're actually paid for the stock, which is when you're getting it into retail, some of our retail payment terms are 120 days. So I might be paying for stock 12, 6 months in advance before then it actually comes back into my pocket. And so it was just having that cash to be able to be like marketing and stock. That was seriously the tall and the short of it was that. And you'll talk to pretty much any other FMCG founder that's done a raise and they'll tell you the same thing. We didn't really need to scale. We don't really need bums on seats like we do, like a tech platform does. You purely just need stock. So yeah, 120-day payment terms is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
But that's just the way. How do I fund that cash gap? Literally through the raise. We needed cash in the bank. There are plenty of ways you can do it as well, right? Like this isn't financial advice, but like there are ways that people have made it work. For me, the way that I just didn't really want to have all this debt and accumulate this debt in the business where then I'm putting myself on the line. That's like literally my head on the chopping block, and I don't really want to go to jail. I think that like I do well in jail, but I don't want to be there. And so like it was just one of those things where I was like, nah, I just like want to have this cash injection in the business where I know that I've got this and I'm not debt financing anything, because that just felt better, made me sleep at night. What was the other side to your question? Sorry, Phoebes.
Yeah, giving away. Well, what the part of the question was, what's it like having investors? But then my add-on was, yeah, how do you think about giving away equity and building a team that cares about Clutch?
Having the investors on board has been honestly the best decision ever. I absolutely love anyone that is a part of the Clutch sphere. Also, you just need to realize when it comes to a raise that they're eating at my table. I'm not eating at theirs. They come to me, and you work for me now. And so I'm probably the fucking worst. I'm sure I drive Blackbird up the wall because like all day, every day, I'm just like, hey, I need this, I need that, I need this from you. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? But that's what they're there for. They're advisors, they're sounding boards, they're people that have seen these problems arise 500 times before, and they know the best way to navigate out of it. And so that's why I did the raise, was not really for, just the money. It was also to have these connections and somebody who has good advice to make sure that we made the right decisions. So that was kind of the way that I did it. In terms of finding then like the right investors, again, purely vibes. I spent time with these people face to face for months before I decided that they were good enough to have a seat at my table. And that's the only way you can do it. You'll meet a lot of very charming, very great people that say that they can do it all. But honestly, the proof is in the pudding. If they're the ones that are actually passionate about your product and speak about it when you're not there with just as much gusto, you'll know, because it's a really small ecosystem, and that comms comes back around. So you'll know who's in your corner. You just got to spend time with them.
And also people that show up, like Silk, our sort of lead investor from Blackbird, is like an absolute legend. And she like fully showed up to all of our like Shark Tank rehearsals and stuff. Like she was there putting in the time. So yeah, it all reveals itself.
Definitely. But yeah, just like don't feel pressured to make decisions quickly. Again, it's your raise. And just, yeah, spend time with these people. It's like your friends. Like you don't just like automatically like have friends overnight, do you? Like you end up building this community of people you trust through time and through, just, yeah, having moments together. So I just treat it the exact same way.
What absolute pearls of wisdom in there. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm aware that we're 1 minute over time, so we'll wrap up there. I'll definitely I know a few people have asked. I'll share the recording. But yeah, I just wanted to say, Lucy, Annabelle, you guys are amazing. That was such a refreshing, interesting chat. I'm in awe of you both. Thank you so much for your time and being so generous with sharing with everyone who's on the call today. I know everyone will have gotten so much out of it. And yeah, go Clutch.
Woo!
Yay,
Thanks,
Team Clutch.
appreciate
Please send me an email if you want to chat and connect. I love talking to everyone and, whatever they're doing. So please feel free to reach out.
I love it. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Annabelle and Lucy. I'll see you soon.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
time,
guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See
Bye.
ya.